Hello again. So today I've got a video that's been in the works for a couple of weeks, and that's because I sold a card a couple of weeks ago, and it was the first card I've sold from my PC, and actually it was the first card I've ever sold, which is pretty weird because I've been into footy cards for a long time, but it kind of matches with my philosophy, I think, because I try and only buy cards that I'm willing to and I want to hold long term. So yeah, this was the first card I sold, so I think it's a really good opportunity to kind of go through the whole process, like buying the card, when I bought it, why I bought it, and also selling. So why I sold it at the time and why I'm trying to sell a couple cards. The cards I want to keep for long term, I'm still not selling, but I kind of wanted to try selling a few cards just to get a different viewpoint on the hobby, because I'm always kind of buy on the cards I want, but I've never really sold, and I think you only get a certain perspective if you sell as well. And it's really easy to buy and say, oh, well, for example, let's just say the Franklin, the draft pick platinum, when I bought it for $160 last year, you could say, well, now that's a $300 card. And I might say, well, I've made $140. But anyone who's sold knows that that's not the case, whether it be in clothes, whether it be in footy cards, whether it be in anything. Just because that's the value or that's what eBay says or whatever, doesn't mean that's the price you're going to get. So it's really kind of important to come at it from a selling angle as well, I think, and that's why I've started to get maybe a few lower end cards and a few cards that I'm happy to flip and I don't want to hold on to for a long time, yeah, just to get a different kind of viewpoint on the hobby. But the specific card I sold was the Boak draft pick signature, and I picked this card up in March of this year, so March 2021. And at the time I paid $40 plus postage. And postage was $4 or something. So I paid $44 all up. And at the time this was a good price, but it wasn't a crazy price. I think they were selling for between $50 to $70 at that time. So $40 was a good price, but it wasn't completely out of the ordinary. And I just remember seeing that and saying, I think that's a really low price for that card and for a player of that stature. He's not an AFL wide grade, and that's why I was willing to sell it, because he's not in my PC kind of players. But he is without a doubt a Port Adelaide great, and probably one of the best Port Adelaide players of all time. And he still has a ways to go, actually. So when I bought this card, I thought, number one, I think it's really cheap. Number two, legacy. He's a top player. No one can take that away from him. And I also thought, well, there's three factors why I think this card's going to go up. The first factor was team success. So I bought this in March of this year. Port had an amazing start to the year. There's still a really good chance going deep in the finals, I think. I think people are writing them off, which is weird because they're still top four, but people don't believe that they can go far. Their list on paper is really, really good, and I think they can still get to the grand final, and they might even win the whole thing, especially with how Bulldogs have been playing the last couple of weeks. But yeah, so team success is the first thing. I thought if Port win the premiership or go deep in finals, the Boak card will go up in price. And if they win the premiership, they're probably going to go up to something like $200. Point two is personal success. So Boak's been in and around the Brownlow count for the last couple of years. He's really put himself up as an elite player in the competition, whereas for many years he was very good, but he wasn't elite. And then the last few years he's just really kicked off. So at the start of the season, not so much now because Wines has taken the reins as the Brownlow leader from Port, but Boak was a very good chance to win the Brownlow. I think it was like third or fourth favourite. So I thought, once again, if he wins the premiership, goes up. If he wins the Brownlow, goes up to about 200. And I thought, if none of this happens for the rest of his career, if Port go down the gurgler, his career kind of tapers off into retirement, then the third thing is he's going to have to retire at some point. And there's been talk that he's going to play for 350, 400 games, but at some point he's going to have to retire. And when he retires, I thought that price is going to have to go up. Now, it's probably not going to spike as much as a Brownlow or a premiership because people buy with emotion at that time and are willing to pay a higher price than they probably should. Retirement's also like that, but it's not as emotional, I don't think. People don't need it as much. It's more like a memory thing, retirement. So yeah, those are my 3 points, and I thought it can't really go down. I don't think that card will ever see $40 again. and if it does, it'll be a long time, and footy cards must have become irrelevant or something, because $40 for that card is a real steal, I thought. Anyway, fast forward later into the year, so this was a couple of weeks ago, I start seeing a few posts on Facebook groups about looking for high-end port cards, and especially looking for high-end Boak cards. And I thought, well, this is a bit weird, like, I wonder why this is. And then I read into it on the AFL website, and of course he was playing his 300th game. So that was something I didn't think of. I had team success, personal success, and retirement. But the fourth thing is milestones. Milestones are very important because it's kind of like a mini retirement, I guess, because it makes people reflect on their career and their stature at the club and their legacy. And lots of people, especially in Adelaide, were just loving Boak, were really talking about Boak and the effect he's had on the club. So I think that led people to look for his cards. And as soon as I started seeing these posts online, I thought, well, maybe I should just check eBay to see what these cards are selling for. So I checked eBay, one sold for like 170, one sold for 130, I think, and maybe one for 150. So I was like, well, that's a pretty big jump in the last 5 months or something. Granted, at the start of the season, I think footy cards weren't as hyped as they are now. The market has picked up a bit. That's just because we're later in the season, and also it's just what's happened in the market since February and March. But yeah, that's a huge price shift nonetheless. It's like more than triple in price. So what I did, I was kind of happy to let this go. I really enjoyed having the card in my PC for like 5 months. It's a great looking card. I think it will do well in the future, but I think at the moment, and I'm still happy with this decision. I was happy to let it go. I didn't need it for the long term. So at that point, I messaged one of the people who put up on Facebook. And this is the point I want to make as well. Like, I'm not making this video to say, oh, I made so much money off this guy, like he made a stupid purchase. That's actually not the case at all. Boak will go down as a Port Adelaide great, and this card could just keep going up and up. And I think long term, you shouldn't have a problem. But when you buy on milestones, or when you buy when people do specific things, for example, when Lance Franklin kicks 1,000 goals, his cards will peak. They'll peak for a couple months, and then they'll go back to where they were. So you just have to be willing to pay a bit extra maybe than you usually would if you're buying at those milestone moments. Anyway, so I got in touch with a guy who was really keen on the Boak draft pick signature. And he asked me what I wanted. I think I said 150, he said 110, and then we just met in the middle at 130. So it's a very easy transaction. It wasn't a problem. I didn't care about getting the full kind of 170 that it sold for on eBay, because everyone knows you have to pay fees, and it's just a pain to ship and stuff. So he was from Adelaide, came and picked it up. It was an easy transaction. So what to take out of this? I think, well, the first thing is it's really satisfying to think about something and think, well, that's cheap, and then wait for 5 months and see it just rise, and then being able to sell it later. So I think it's a good example of putting theories into practice and it working out. I've actually, as soon as I did that, I probably got a bit ahead of myself, but I went and bought this. So this is the Shannon Hearn rookie card. This is the year the rookie cards were numbered out of 800. This is the same rookie class as Pendle's, I'm pretty sure, but this is number 235. He had his 300th game a couple of weeks back, but I only paid like $15 for this or something, so it was a good price. But I don't necessarily believe as much in this card. Number one, it's not his best, it's not his draft pick signature. And number two, I think on his 300th weekend, if you're in Perth or in Western Australia, you could definitely flip this just on Marketplace or something. But being in Adelaide, I think I underestimated how much being in Adelaide affected the Boak thing, because everyone was talking about him that weekend. And I'm sure it was the same thing in Western Australia with Hearn. But yeah, you kind of have to be in the place to get that effect. Other than that, yeah, I hope people enjoyed a bit of the story of kind of the thoughts behind it, and when I bought and also when I sold. So I feel like I've forgotten a couple of things, but anyway, I think I'll end it there. So have a great weekend, and see you guys next time.